My name was Connie Johnson. I have a new name now because I'm married. Um, I was part of the Kingston group, and I left in 1978. So I've been gone a long time. The reason I left is when I got to be 17, it was time for me to get married, and they went around it in a very bad way. They didn't want me to have any input. They didn't care if I even knew who I was going to get married to. They let me know that I didn't have any choices. They say that young people are supposed to pray for guidance from God, for, what's the word? Direction. But they don't believe that, and they don't practice that because they don't care what direction or dreams or whatever you have. They already have a plan for you, and you don't have a choice. They don't care what you want. They're going to try to force their decisions on you, no matter what. And I rebelled against that. I was the oldest of my mother's children, so I was probably a little bit spoiled. And I rebelled, and I left with another young man who was also a part of the order, the Kingston group. And we went to another state and got married, and we had kids. And we were happy for a couple of years. After we left, the guy that I married had two sisters that lived in Idaho, and they helped us out a little bit. They helped us get a checking account and guided us in getting jobs. But it wasn't very hard. It was really easy to get a job. Neither one of us had a high school diploma. But at that time, back in the late 70s, even the 80s, 90s, was really easy. We lied. We said we had a high school diploma. And every job that I ever had required a high school diploma. But at that time, it was really difficult to check. Now, they can check in just 10 minutes. They can pull up your transcripts. But at that time, nobody ever bothered to check. I dropped out after the 9th grade, partly through the 10th grade. I wasn't doing very much. I was working full-time outside of school, and I wasn't really interested in school. Oh no, nobody ever noticed that I even got grades. Nobody ever looked at my report card or said anything about it. That wasn't what was important. What was important was that I was working for the group and providing benefits for the group. My father was Ortel Kingston. My mother was somewhere around the 7th wife. I don't know exactly. And I was her oldest child. But very few children other than the legal wife's children had a relationship with Ortel. I didn't have a relationship with him. I didn't know who my dad was until I was 8. We were told that our father was a truck driver, and he was away driving truck. And occasionally there would be talk among the adults about, oh, your dad, this and this. And we'd perk up, our dad? Our dad was here? Well, he got here after you were all in bed, and he left before you woke up. So we were all excited because we had a dad out there. And one day he was going to come home and we were going to meet him. And we all had this fantasy that there was a guy out there that loved us and that was going to take care of us and be there for us. So when I found out that Ortels, the leader of the Kingston group, was our father, it's like finding out there's no Santa Claus. Like, well, I already don't like him. I don't want him to be my dad. And so then the illusion is gone. There is no father out there that's going to love us. There is no father out there that's going to be there for us. It's like finding out that your fantasies are not real. And then when I was 8 years old, they decided that was the age that we could be trusted with that information. So I found out, I was told that he was our father, but I wasn't told who else was married to him. So that was kind of a guessing game. For a little while, every woman in the order that wasn't married, I thought was probably married to my dad. And there were a couple that I thought were married to him that were not, because there were other men there too. But I slowly figured out, just through process of elimination, I figured out which ones were. But everybody knew that he spent time with, and he was an actual father to the legal wife's children. Everybody knew that they called him dad. He went to their school plays. He was home with them at night. He wasn't home. He didn't come to our house. He came to our house mostly by the time I was 10 years old, he was coming twice a year, on Mom's anniversary and on her birthday. Oh, she was conceiving. She was still conceiving, but that was enough time. He was a busy man. He didn't have time. I found out later that the legal wife had a calendar in her kitchen hanging up where the wives would call and tell her when their fertile day was. And she would write it on the calendar in the kitchen where everybody could see, and everybody knew what it was. That was the fertile day. And occasionally there would be a third visit because of a positive fertility date. But that didn't happen very often. My mother was pregnant at least half of the time she was married. She had 13 children and at least one miscarriage, maybe more. I started working at a very young age. The order had a motel, and I was probably 10 years old when I was cleaning rooms at the motel. And another job I had was I used to sweep floors at a factory. My brother and I would, after school, we would ride the bus to the factory and we would sweep the floors and clean the bathrooms, and basically whatever they required of us, we did. When I was 17 and I was working in the order, I don't remember exactly what we were paid. That was a long time ago, but it was probably less than half of minimum wage because we were working under the table. There were no taxes taken out. There was no reporting of our income. So there was no reason to pay us the legal minimum wage. I I think when people got older and got married, they did earn minimum wage. But at that time, minimum wage was the standard for everyone. And I think they had the idea that minimum wage was there for a reason. It was a standard. Why should they pay anybody more than that when that's the standard? We were always told that in the order, at least we'll always have a job, at least we'll always have some place to live, a home to live in. We'll always be taken care of. And when I was thinking about leaving, one of the things they told me is that if you leave, every day you're going to question whether you did the right thing. Every day you're going to have to make that decision over again if you should go back or not. But it's just the opposite, because once you leave, everything is easier. Everything is better. Everything is so much fun. And it's just the opposite, because people that stay, they question every day why they didn't leave and if they should leave and how can they leave now. I know that they used different people as examples. And I lost my first pregnancy. I lost my first child. He only lived for about a week. And I'm sure that they thought that that was a punishment for me leaving. Actually, my mother thought I was pregnant when I left. And I heard her tell someone, why else would she leave? But I wasn't pregnant when I left. But I did lose my first child. And they used that as an example. I had a brother die. I was 17 when I first ran away, and he was 16. He was a year younger than me. And a week after I left, he died. He was hit by a car and died. And I've heard different stories about, well, he paid that price so that you could come back. You can now be accepted to come back, which there's no way I would have. And I've heard a lot of other stories about he paid the price. He had to die because I left. It was my fault. And among the family, they use those tragedies to teach us, to tell a story that if you don't do what's right, somebody might be hurt. If you leave, something bad's going to happen. And, it's hard to convince anybody that someone else's misfortune happens to them because of something you did. And I thought it was funny that they would even try to say something like that. But apparently a lot of people take that serious and believe it. I was only 17, and I did go back to my mother's house, and I stayed for the funeral, and I stayed through the month of December. I had my birthday where I was 18, and then I left again. Of course, my mother had the idea that because Stephen died, I was back to stay. That after being gone even for a week, there's no way I would go back to stay. It was so much better to be away and to make my own decisions and to have my own money and to control my own money, control my own decisions. I remember in the order, they came up with a plan where you could put money in a secret savings account, and you could pledge $100 or $200 a month into a secret savings account. Only those secret savings accounts disappeared, and when people wanted to use that money, it wasn't there. And when people asked about it, if they insisted, the amount that came back was a lot lower than it should have been. So a lot of people felt cheated by that. A lot of people, when they left and they wanted to get their money, because we saved for the time we were young, we were working, and we saved most of that money. So we saved, but when we left, trying to get that money out was really tricky. And the people that left tried different things to secretly get their money out. Some insisted that they could get their money out, but they never were able to get what was rightfully theirs. I, myself, when I knew I was going to leave, I started to hoard cash. I would ask for cash to go shopping or cash to buy different things, but I would hoard that cash, and I secretly kept a stack of cash. So when I left, I had enough money for a couple months' rent and everything that I needed. My mother, of course, she was told by her husband. She was told that she had to cut me out of her life. But she didn't want to do that, and so I did have a relationship with her. I talked to her on the phone. After I left, it was about a year before I ever came back to Salt Lake and visited her. And she was very hurt. She said to me, she said, "It's okay for you to call and let me know you're okay." And she also says that she knew that because I had a good work history, that I would always be able to get a job and take care of myself, but she didn't think my husband would. She didn't have a very high opinion of him. But she did believe that I would be able to get a job and take care of everything I needed. Well, people that are in there, they have a really hard life. They are monitored with everything that they buy, every place they go. They're monitored as to who they talk to. They're told who they can have for friends, and they're told not to have any friends that are not part of the group. And if someone is mad at them, their husband or another wife is mad at them, everybody can turn on them, and they're just abused continually by everyone they know because they don't have any outside friends. As an outside person, if something happened and somebody didn't like me, or if I got fired, or somebody didn't like something I did, all I had to do was find someone new. There's always another job. There's always another friend. There's always somewhere else that you can go. If you don't like the neighborhood you're in, it's easy to move, but not in the order. You don't have those options. You don't have the option of finding a new friend or finding a new home. I was interested. I wanted to buy a house and have a garden and do fun things. And that didn't happen when I was married because My then husband wasn't interested in that. After I did get divorced, I was able to buy a house 3 different times as a single person, and a lot easier than I ever thought it would be. I'm retired now, but I worked for about 18 years as a letter carrier for the post office. Then I injured my ankle, and I had to have my ankle fused, and I haven't really worked since then. So that was quite a while ago. I've been retired for 15, 18 years. In the order, there was no retirement. And that's one thing that's really sad is they don't take care of their elderly. They don't take care of handicapped people. They don't take care of they don't take care of new mothers. They don't take care of any of their people. Yeah, there's no retirement in the order. But the elderly do still get Social Security, and that's all they have to live on. If that's not enough, it's not the order doesn't see it as their problem. Now that I'm not in the order, we have a pretty good life with my new husband. We own a nice home that's paid off. We don't have any bills. We're both receiving Social Security. We were both retired for probably 5 to 10 years before we got Social Security and still had enough income basically to do a lot of traveling and whatever we want. He likes to go to really nice restaurants, and that's pretty fun. I think what I'm most proud of is my two kids. They've both done very well for themselves. They've grown up to be independent and have pretty good lives. We were told that our life would be really difficult. We wouldn't have anyone to turn to. And that was true. It would have been easier for me as a single mother if I'd had family to rely on. And I didn't have that because they basically turned their backs on me. But in all the time that my kids were growing up and I was a single mother, there was never a time that we didn't have grocery money. There was never a time that we didn't have a nice place to live. Never a time that we didn't have a nice car. There was never a time that we had any need that we couldn't provide for. So that was just me with 2 kids, and I was able to do everything.